Greetings to you. My name is Tara Brabazon and I'm the Dean of Graduate Research at Flinders University. Welcome to vlog 202, Writer's Block. This request comes via a student who wished to remain anonymous, and that's cool. And he's having some challenges, not only producing writing, but getting him into a space where he can even think writing is a possibility. So today we're going to talk about writer's block and offer some really concrete strategies to manage it. This session is what looks like is going to be the start of a series on writing. I get a lot of requests about writing and how to do it and strategies and problems and all the rest of it. They tend to be a little bit generalized, but I'll do the best I can to pick out themes and paradigms and tropes. But if you, yes you, have challenges with writing, please email me or have a chat or leave a comment somewhere through multiple social media sites and just help me hone and shape what you need to help you with your writing today. But appropriately, therefore, we need to really start, I suppose, with the block, with writer's block. And I haven't ever experienced this. I write very easily, but in some ways that's useful because it means I've come to the research to understand it as a research problem. I'm not putting my personal experience and angst through it. I'm actually looking at what does the research say and therefore how can we manage it. So I've really enjoyed this one. And look, it has created a bit of a stroppy vlog just for a change, but let's do this together as a family. Okay, so the best of writing emerges when you have a stable, creative and intellectual environment. Or I think it does, because obviously that stable, intellectual, creative environment never actually happens, because this is like life. So if you're waiting for inspiration, darlings, if you're waiting for stability and security, then you've got no sense of what the contemporary higher education sector is about or like. And if you're waiting for that flash of insight, you're going to be waiting a very, very long time. Because in many ways, I believe, writer's block is based on a false assumption that you need inspiration, that you need creativity to write. Now, that assumption is a dream. It's a scenario that never emerges. It's about, I think, the hopes and the aspirations of who you think you should be rather than who you actually are. And can I say, writer's block does not have good intellectual credentials. It emerged in 1946 from an Austrian psychoanalyst, Edmund Berger. Hang on to yourself. Berger argued that writer's block was caused by, and I'm just going to try and manage this, writer's block was caused by oral mastication, mothers who bottle fed their babies, so clearly there's a mouth issue occurring here, and also an unstable love life. So they're the causes of writer's block. Isn't this going well? So this is obviously bonkers, bless, but I have no doubt that actually writer's block describes something real. It is describing an actuality in your life. And when I read the symptoms, if you will, or the characteristics of writer's block, they are real and they are debilitating. So what we're dealing with is the people who are confronting or managing writer's block, they feel either trapped or stuck, or they feel pretty helpless to progress. But I'm arguing today that there are particular ways of thinking to get you out of this scenario and these characteristics. And I'm arguing also that particularly false assumptions, I think, get you into this space in the first place. So today I've put in place some very, very clear strategies to smash writer's block to pieces. And it has nothing to do with an unstable love life or what you happen to be doing with your mouth. If you're not working as effectively as you believe you should be, so say you're not confronting writer's block, but you just feel you're not very efficient, then maybe today there is a characteristic that'll help you get that momentum too. Okay, so let's get into this. One, really crucial one, recognise that writer's block is a proxy for something else. Okay, writer's block is not about writing. It's about something else, which may be a fear of failure, anxiety, stress, imposter syndrome, right? You're worried that you're not going to be successful. So when we try and look through what are the causes of writing issues, we really need to recognise it's not about writing. The causes lie elsewhere, and therefore we need to address those causes. And therefore that's when using yoga, meditation, talk therapy, going for walks, talking with your friends, listening to music. This sort of stuff is actually quite useful, because what it's doing is it's addressing the key issue that is quite disconnected from your writing. But if you are paralysed with fear, and I know some of you are, then all the techniques I'm going to talk about to manage the writing are not going to work because you're paralysed with fear. And that maybe is fear of failure. It's not about the writing. So we've got to address the fears, manage your stress. Now I know that's very easy to say. It is. And it seems like a huge task. But what are you doing today, right now, to manage your stress? Now, peer support is excellent. So sharing and talking about that stress with your friends, that's important. Walking, great. Listening to music, great. But also something to maybe trial is a quick 10-minute meditation. Now, look, I'm not a hippie. I'm an old goth, right? But what I can say to you as someone who has been doing 10 minutes of meditation every morning for the last 3 months is my heart rate absolutely plummets. I have the lowest heart rate that I have in my entire day during that 10 minutes of meditation. So I know this all seems a bit bonkers, but why don't we address the stress directly? Instead of looking at the writing, why don't you just either on YouTube or iTunes or use Alexa, can I have a 10-minute meditation? And Alexa will deliver that, okay? So do for me, just try something like that, an intervention in the stress without folding that problem into your writing. Address the stress before we get to the writing. 2, learn from ABBA. Or if you want a bit of credibility, but why would you? If you want a bit of credibility, learn from Bob Dylan. Now don't panic, I'm not going to sing Fernando, although I have a fantastic singing voice. Joking, you're not ready for that. But if ABBA is too much for you, then Bob Dylan also used this same strategy to write. And both ABBA and Bob, that is Benny, Bjorn and Bob, are prolific songwriters. So the interesting thing about Benny, Bjorn and Bob is that they have something in common, and that is they scheduled their writing. They never waited for inspiration to arrive. So what would happen is Benny and Bjorn would meet each other at 10 a.m. Benny would be on the piano, Bjorn would be on the guitar, and they would start to write. Similarly, Bob would show up at his typewriter and start writing. They didn't hope that a tune or a lyric would appear. They knew it was work, and they knew it was a slog. Because, and this is what makes me crazy when people teach writing, writing is not an art. I know I'm going to get a lot of abuse for that, but let's be real here. Writing is not an art. It's a craft. Writing is a craft. So sit down and craft your words. Show up. Show up. And if you show up, something will happen. 3, give yourself writing time. So I can hear you saying, oh, Tara, Bob Dylan, right, well, whatever, but how am I going to do this? How am I going to craft writing? Easy, easy, easy. Let me tell you, every single day, I want you to craft out, cut out 30 minutes in your day, or an hour if you like, but start, if you're having issues, start with 30 minutes. And during those 30 minutes, I want you to show up. Show up. Ignore the writer's block. Don't use the language. Ignore it. Sit down and start. And don't judge what you write. All you have to do is fill that 30 minutes with words. And you know what? You might start typing your name over and over again, just to get you into the physicality of writing, because writing does have a physicality to it. So what happens is, if you show up like this, your body associates a particular place and time with the physical act of writing. And where our bodies go, surprisingly, our mind follows. 4, give yourself a writing target. Now, if sectioning off 30 minutes a day or an hour a day to write like this doesn't make a difference, and in 99% of the cases it does, to be honest with you, but if that is not working for you and it's intensifying your stress, then change it. Give yourself a word target. Some of the most successful PhD students I've ever seen, we've ever had at Flinders University, have given themselves a writing target every single day. So they write 250 words a day. Some people write 500 words a day. Again, don't judge the words. Just write the words, stop. Write the words, stop. And can I say, some of the best writers in the world have used this technique. Graham Greene famously wrote 30 books writing 250 words a day. Wow. 5, crunchy one. Compartmentalize private and public time. Okay, so we've talked about the craft of writing, finding an hour. If that's not working, giving yourself a word limit. That will work. But as we know, writing is contextual. It is. And there's no doubt, if you show up, if you write in the same place every single day, then you are productive. But the people who have the most challenge and challenges with regard to writing, who report writer's block, are the ones that are attempting to write all the time. So they don't go, oh right, I'm having my writing time and then I stop. They're attempting to write sort of every minute of every day, and they're trying to write through family issues, paid employment, unpaid employment, housework, chaos, right? They're trying to write through chaos. And then they get stressed that they're not being productive. But of course, they're attempting to write all the time, but they're not really, are they? Because they're not focused. So what we're actually talking about when people say, I've got writer's block, I'm trying to write all day, this is the narrative, trying to write all day, and I just can't write. But actually what you're attempting to do is not really write. You're attempting to write through chaos, and no one can do that. So use the earlier strategies I've talked about here. Segment 30 minutes out, 60 if you like, but 30 minutes is a good place to start. And do it for real. Do it for real. Door closed. Social media off. No interruption. Note on your door for your family, I will be 30 minutes, and log this time, no interruptions. And then write. And when you've discharged that time, you are free. So you've got that focus. And look, it's no wonder, I think, if people are thinking in their head, and of course they're not really, but they're thinking in their head that they're writing all day and just can't get to it because everything's all a bit chaotic. Obviously they're going to get stressed because they're trying all day to write and it's not happening. I'm getting stressed telling you this narrative. But then when I do see this in students and I look at what they're doing and I actually look at their day, I see the problem. And students say to me all the time, Tara, I'm trying to write all the time. And I watch them, and what they're actually doing with their day is talking. They're talking with their lab mates, they're talking with their friends, their mates in their office, talk, 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 talk. And then they're wondering where the day's gone. Oh, I've been in the office the whole day and not much has got done. Talking. So they're not productive because they are confusing talking with writing. And talking and writing are very different things. And I've actually had 3 students in my very long supervisory career where I had to stop the meetings at the end. They were nearly finished within sort of 20, 30 hours of finishing just by doing the draft. And I had to stop the meetings because they were using the meetings as an excuse to talk. And I'd say, no, we're actually nearly finished, dude. No talking, writing. No talking, writing. So I stopped the meetings so they would actually write. No excuses. And what was happening, and this may be happening to you, you're confusing talking about your thesis and writing your actual thesis. So isolate yourself from others. For 30 minutes a day, write with focus. Don't confuse busy work with writing. Don't confuse a social life with an intellectual life. So for those 30 minutes a day, this is really important, disconnect from the internet. You do not need to know if someone liked your photograph on Instagram for 30 minutes. You really don't. Calm the farm, less talking, more writing. So 6, crucial one, relax with the first draft. There's another group who suffer from writer's block because they are perfectionists, and this is a whole different group really. And what I want to do for this group, hi team, is I want to give you permission to use and write imperfect words. Team, hi. The best writers are not the best writers. They are the best editors. My first drafts, remember I've written 20 books, 200 plus refereed articles, hundreds of articles of journalism. I write for a living. My first drafts are shocking. They are an embarrassment. I would never share them with others. My first drafts are terrible. But I write well because I draft well. I edit well. So write your 250 words and just write it. Don't edit it, don't cut and paste, don't do anything, don't judge it, just write it. So what I want you to do for our perfectionists out there is separate your writing and your drafting. These are different variables. Writer's block confuses them. Just write, no judgment. Boom. 7, ignore the rules. Ignore the rules. One of the most frequently cited causes of writer's block is the imposition of all these rules about what is good writing. And look, I understand that. When I was searching and doing research for this, there are thousands of books about how to be a good writer. Thousands of them. It's unbelievable. And look, sometimes these rules about what makes good writing comes from your supervisor. It might be a leftover from some relatively mediocre undergraduate marking rubric, bless. But writer's block can be caused by the often completely arbitrary assumptions of others about what makes good writing. So they're imposing their rules on you and you're going, this is just not working for me, and you're panicking, and then you've got writer's block. So supervisors have a really bad tendency, and this really does worry me. Supervisors have a really bad tendency to generalise their way of writing on their students. Yeah, but of course everybody writes differently, and you as a PhD student, you have a right to discover your own path and your own way of writing, rather than just being a photocopy or a duplication of your supervisor. And so one of the reasons you may be having difficulties is that you're being asked to write like somebody else, and you can't do it. So I'm always in a very lucky position. We may tell some of these stories in this series at some point, but a lot of people try to tell me how to write. And I personally love this. You know, they try and tell me about academic publishing. Do tell. I'm all ears, fascinating. And of course then I look at their CVs and read their writing and I go, really? You're telling me how to write? Good luck with that. So team, just write. don't try and write like anybody else. Don't try and write like you think you should write, or someone who's pretty mediocre themselves are telling you how to write. Ignore expectations. You know what? Ignore rules. Just write. No judgment. 8. Reduce chaos. The literature reports, and this is a great one, the literature reports that one of the key reasons that writer's block emerges is because of a chaotic pre-writing stage. I thought this was brilliant. So what that means is you have no idea what you're writing about. So you come to the writing going, I can't write. Actually, dude, that's not your problem. You hadn't planned what you were going to write about. So you've got a chaotic pre-writing stage. So this problem is not about writing. It's about reading. And that's not writer's block. That's a lack of research. So this means you're not writing because you've got no content to write about. So therefore, do some reading, take some notes, and then use those notes as the scaffold to do your own writing. So what I always do, you know, I write in the morning, every morning, and the afternoon before, there's my computer, I'm doing it in my head, so you've seen my office at home, there's my computer, and right there are the 3 points that I'm going to write about every morning. There are the readings, there's the notes, these are the points I'm writing on this morning. So, got myself a cup of coffee, computer up, start. So, have a really organised pre-writing routine, and then writing is very, very straightforward. And can I say, it's really obvious that if you don't know what you're writing about, obviously your writing's going to be stressful. So don't judge yourself. That's not writing, that's reading. So reduce the chaos of your thoughts, take good notes, express interesting ideas emerging from those notes. And can I just make a real point to really do an intervention today? Do not start writing from this point forward until you know what you are going to write about in that writing session. So don't flip through in a chaotic environment. Organise your scholarly environment. Break your work into chunks. So chunking is a great idea. And don't think big picture. If you're having problems going, oh, it's all too big, don't think big picture. Think one idea, 250 words. Don't judge yourself. Also, don't think you have to start writing at the beginning. Tip for punters, low-hanging fruit, whatever is the easiest paragraph for you to write any morning, that's the paragraph you write. If you've got no beginning, if you've got no start, don't start there. Start in the middle. It's cool. And also, guys, never work from a blank page or a blank screen. When I have an idea or I discover an interesting word or a fascinating phrase or I read something, I go, ooh, and I just add a phrase to an article that I'm writing or a book. I just add it. And what that means, oh, that's an interesting word. What happens then is when I approach it the next morning, I've already got about 5 or 6 ideas on the screen. So if I'm not having what I would call a great morning, I can just take those 5 or 6 phrases and make them into something new. Okay. So then you make phrases into sentences, a sentence into a paragraph, your 250 words is done, winning. 9, crucial one. Stop writing for readers. So this means, and I know this is unusual and counterintuitive, stop writing for your peers or referees or your supervisors or your examiners. Stop writing for an audience. And to make this point, I'm going to go back to Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan didn't and still doesn't care about his audience at all. I always remember the Martin Scorsese documentary about Bob, and they interviewed a guy who knew him through the 1960s, a really cool guy. I always remember the leather jacket. He was a really cool guy. And he said in the 1960s, Bob never cared about his audience. He created his world and the audience came to him. Changed my life, that did. What an amazing phrase. So he created his vista. He didn't do it for an audience, but the audience came to Bob. So you know what? You do the same. stop writing for an imaginary audience. And of course, you're always assuming that that imaginary audience is critical of you. So stop the self-talk, stop the imaginary friends, stop the imaginary readers. And you know what? Just write for yourself. Create your own world, and the readers, the audience, will come to you. 10. Sonic strategy. Okay, if the previous 9 don't work, the best strategy I know for a student that has completely lost all self-confidence is as follows. I shift them from focusing on the screen and writing to the sound and talking. What I do is I ask students to summon the memo function on their phone and speak the argument. And if they can't really manage to speak the argument, then I do an interview with them, which we record, and I scaffold them through to speaking the argument. Then I get those students to simply press play, put their headphones on, and transcribe what they said. And then from that point where they've got ideas, they can edit from there. So that avoids the blank screen, avoids the blinking cursor, and you've already got some words and ideas that you can craft into an argument. Okay, so they're my 10 tips. One of them will work for you. Maybe all of them will render you more efficient. But what I suppose I'd say to you is that writer's block does remain that proxy for something else that is going on in your life. And look, it might be fear, it might be exhaustion, it might be high standards, which in effect is a fear of failure. It could be imposter syndrome, which is a fear of rejection. It could be perfectionism, the fear of not being good enough. You can hear the fear continuing to come. Busyness, fear of not having enough time. Laziness, fear of starting because you're just not good enough. You see what's happening here? Or indeed just a lack of structure, not knowing where to start. So what I hope we've done by looking at the 10 tips today is develop a system. And you'll notice this is not a creative system. This is simply a system for productivity. That's all we're doing. We're creating a system where productivity is inevitable. Let's do this. Let's write together. Let's make this a big year for all of us. I wish you love, light, and peace. Tea out.